The great temples of Abu Simbel, existing just by Lake Nasser, almost 300 kilometers south to Aswan. Here, an engineering miraculous happens. Twice a year, once in 22nd of February and once in the 22nd of October. In that miracle, the sun shines from the east in the early hours of the morning and aligns its rays all the way into the temple through the gate, arriving into the sanctuary, where it shines over 4 faces of gods. Actually, 3 of them are gods, and one belongs to King Ramesses II, the owner of this temple, and the other small temple of Queen Nefertari next to it. So, tourists from all over the world come on these specific dates just to witness this miracle.
The ancient Egyptian engineer had used his astronomical knowledge and subjugated it to serve his creeds and its constructional needs. The most impressive and formidable example of that are the great temples of the New Kingdom. Amongst them, only one stands as a prominent and dominant construction. This shows the perfection of engineering and the geniusity of the ancient Egyptian architect. It's the great temple of Abu Simbel. King Ramesses II, the builder of Abu Simbel temples, is the most famous pharaoh of the 19th dynasty kings. He ruled Egypt after the death of his father Seti I for 67 years. That was between year 1305 and 1237 BC. In a text on the walls of Seti I's temple in Abydos, he mentioned that his son was co-regent with him during the latest period of his 14 years of ruling Egypt. King Ramesses II has immortalized himself by building temples and chapels and stelae all over Egypt, the most important of which is the great temple of Abu Simbel, which he dedicated to the cult of Amun and Ra-Hor-Akhti and Betah and himself. Next to it is a small temple of Abu Simbel known as Queen Nefertari's temple, dedicated to herself and to goddess Hathor. The great temple of Abu Simbel is a unique prototype of its kind in the art of the human architecture. In fact, Ramesses II has distinguished the area of Abu Simbel over other areas where he had built his other temples, for it was considered one of the holiest places 5 centuries before he thought of achieving this great project. The goddess of the western hills, or Apshik, goddess Hathor, was the source of the sanctity of this place. Abu Simbel lies 280 kilometers south to Aswan city. It comprises the biggest rock-cut temple in the whole world. It's a great Abu Simbel temple, which was consecrated to God Amun, God Betah, God Ra-Hor-Akhti by King Ramesses II, who was represented here for the first time in the history of the pharaohs in his divine nature. The temple is distinguished by its engineering geniusity. When the sun rays penetrates the temple during sunrise and reaches the deepest part of the temple, which is a sanctuary. Then, the rays shine on the four faces of the statues sitting in there, one after another. This happens 2 times a year, on the 22nd of October and 22nd of February, which are supposed to be the 2 most important dates in the life of King Ramesses, his birthday and his coronation day. The other engineering miracle in the temple happened in modern history, when the UNESCO called for the rescuing of the Nubian temples built behind the High Dam. This temple and the smaller temple beside it that belongs to Ramesses' wife, Queen Nefertari, were both cut out and dismantled into thousands of blocks. After choosing a new higher location, the 2 temples were rebuilt carefully on the same original angles, so that the sun can keep shedding its rays on the sanctuary 2 times a year at sunrise. This event expresses a strong relation between Amon the sun god and King Ramesses II during his life and after his death. Enough to say that both their names were immortalized and mentioned together, thanks to the great man-made miracle of Abu Simbel temples and the everlasting ingenuity of Egyptians who lived and created before any mankind.
The first engineering miracle concerning the great temple of Abu Simbel was connected to the ancient Egyptians, who constructed this temple so that the rays of the sun aligns from the east to the west on the 22nd of February and the 22nd of October. These rays penetrate through the gate, arriving into the sanctuary and shining on the faces of the 4 gods inside. The second engineering miracle happened in the modern times, when the UNESCO led a great project in 1963 to cut the temple from its location and move it a little bit upwards, because after building the great dam, the High Dam, the water in Lake Nasser was supposed to rise and cover the 2 temples of Abu Simbel. So the UNESCO had to cut the 2 temples, and move all the stones all the way up to this new location.
The temples of Abu Simbel are considered the largest rock-cut temples in the world. They are located 280 kilometers north to the Sudanese borders on the west bank of Lake Nasser. Being exposed to the dangers of the rising water after building the High Dam, the 2 temples were dismantled into 1,043 pieces and reconstructed again on a site 180 meters northwest the original location and 65 meters higher. The work was done in the summer of 1968 in 4 years only. The first temple was built by King Ramesses II in the 13th century BC. It was dedicated to god Ra-Hor-Akhti and god Amon, god Betah, and King Ramesses himself in his divine nature. The facade contains 4 colossal figures of Ramesses II, each rising to 20 meters, around which are 12 life-size statues of the royal members of his family. Above the entrance stands the figure of Ra Hur-Akhti, while near the summit of the facade are 22 baboons standing and raising their hands to welcome the sunrise. Inside the temple, the master hall is supported by Osiris-shaped pillars which were cut into the rock. They represent King Ramses II himself. In the 5th year of his reign, he fought the Hittites in a famous battle called Kadesh and conquered their king Hattusili. The battle of which the king was so proud that he recorded 1,100 scenes of war on the interior walls of this hall. The king is shown fighting, conquering, humiliating, and defeating his enemies. The camp of war is depicted in details, where we can see horses resting, soldiers getting medical treatment, while others fixing their gear. The enemies were besieged in their fort, begging for the help that never came. Ramses II achieved a striking blow to the Hittites and secured a total victory. The enemies were captured and brought to Egypt, a scene of which the king was proud enough to inscribe it on the sides of his throne in every single statue, so that the history will always remember that the Egyptian pharaoh, who sat on the throne for 67 years, achieved glory, dignity, and a tremendous victory to his country, Egypt. The monuments of Abu Simbel were practically unknown in the world of Egyptology until Johann Ludwig visited the site in 1813, when he saw the upper part of the temple almost covered by sand. Shortly afterwards, in 1817, Belzoni removed most of it and discovered the entrance door. In the 1960s, the high dam was built in Aswan, 280 kilometers north, and resulted in a buildup of water in Lake Nasser, which threatened to submerge the temples. In 1964, UNESCO started a $40 million rescue operation, in which the temples were dismantled and reconstructed 65 meters higher than the original site. In Inside the big temple, the vestibule precedes the sanctuary. It's a chamber with 4 square columns showing Ramesses and his wife Nefertari presenting offerings to the gods, in addition to other religious scenes. The main god of the temple is Ra-Hur-Akhti, but Amun, the ram-headed god, being the main god of ancient Egypt, is here too. The priests are shown carrying the sacred boat of the god and marching with it during ceremonies. There are side rooms on each side. Once, they have been used as storerooms to keep the temple's cultic objects and treasures, and the rituals' tools. Their walls are finely decorated, and the vivid 3,000 years old colors are amazing. The king is shown in relationship with Amun-Ra and Horus the falcon god, and Ptah, who's a patron of art and literature, represented in a human figure. These sacred oval shapes are called cartouches. Each contains the name of the king only, and Ramesses made sure to cut them deep into the walls to avoid being erased by any successor in the future. Beyond the vestibule, 60 meters in from the entrance to the temple, we come to the most sacred place, the Holy of the Holies, or the sanctuary. 4 seated statues of Ra-Hur-Akhti, the deified Ramesses II, Amun-Ra and Ptah, are carved from the rock of the rear wall. The temple was aligned so that twice a year, on February the 22nd and October the 22nd, the sun's rays penetrate through the length of the temple and shine on each statue from right to left, then floods the sanctuary with light. The phenomena that stands witness to the ancient Egyptian geniusity of engineering and is witnessed twice a year by thousands of visitors who come from all over the world to celebrate these occasions.